Hi, this is Joe Wells from Motown Key West, Florida, aka Island Joe. What you're about to hear here is Chapter 1, named Day 1, from a short story I wrote for the last 7 days in Key West. This ebook may be purchased at Barnes & Noble or Amazon. For more information, go to our website at islandjoescoffee.com. I hope you enjoy it.
Chapter 1, Day 1. Doug, can you get me a glass of wine? Can I, or will I, for two different things? Ruth smiled. Playing hardball? Doug smiled back. You shouldn't drink. That's a matter of opinion, Ruth reminded him. You've been there for most everything, which I have not, and for this I'm very sorry. Ruth's tone in her voice was very soothing and forgiving. Now don't start feeling guilty again. We've been over that 100 times. Doug smiled in a thankful manner. I know, but it still hurts my soul. It's late in life for us to have regrets, and time is short. For me, that's easier said than done. Continuing to speak with her soothing voice, Ruth kept a smile on her face. Now you're feeling sorry for yourself again. You're a stronger man than this. I know you well. Doug lowered his head slightly and tried not to show the tears he was fighting back. Perhaps you're right, but it still hurts deep inside. I feel it in my bones. Ruth knew her husband well. Look up. Do you not see how far we have come together? Doug lifted his head, giving his tearing eyes a quick wipe. Ruth was right. They'd come a long way together in life. They were sitting on their back porch in Key West looking at the ocean. This was a long way from waiting tables together in Memphis. There was a nice breeze most early evenings. The fresh smell of the ocean and its cooling breeze relaxed them both. They opened up more to one another and shared their deepest thoughts about life. They had grown up together, so words and trust came easy. Doug went on. When you go, odds are I'll sell this house and move down the road. Agreeing, Ruth kept her eyes focused on the ocean. Yes, it might be easier for you to live closer or perhaps in town. I really enjoy the dolphins when they swim by. Yes, I like that too. They're just amazing. Have you been looking at other homes? Ruth asked. Doug looked at Ruth as she kept her eyes fixed toward the ocean. He responded in a low but firm voice. No, I haven't, and I will not. Finally, she turned her head to look at Doug. Thank you for feeling that way about us. Then she changed the subject. Remember the time you told me about getting your great-grandmother, the one you called Big Mama, a beer when she was not supposed to have one? Laughing, Doug turned his head toward the ocean. The serenity of the ocean helped them both to reflect. Yes, I do, and man, did I get an ass chewing from my papaw. How many colors do you see in the ocean this evening? Pausing for a moment to focus on the waters, Doug said, I see 3 also. Great eyes see alike. Now tell me the story about your Big Mama, Ruth insisted. Doug had grown up mainly at his Mama and Papa's house in a town of about 300 in Arkansas. They were not poor, but things did get thin on occasions. However, there was always plenty of love and food in the house. Big Mama was the mother of Doug's Papa. They moved her from Alabama after all her other relatives had died. She had become old, was no longer able to care for herself. She had always been good to Doug. One day, when Doug was about 12 or so, he came home to find that Big Mama was alone in the house. Doug, is that you? Big Mama asked. Yes, Big Mama. And then Doug asked, where's everyone? I'm not sure. I know your grandfather's working, and I think your grandmother said she was going to the store. My mind plays tricks on me. I sometimes forget things. Doug smiled and sat next to his grandmother. How old are you now, Big Mama? I am old. Yes, I can see that, Big Mama. Easy there, young man. I'm still not so old that I can't put you across my knee. Still smiling, Doug put his arm around her shoulders. He gave her a gentle hug. I believe this to be true. Big Mama looked at Doug. He had grown tall at an early age, and she only stood about 5'2" at that. She laughed. Remember the time I washed your mouth out with soap for using bad words? How could I forget? I blew bubbles out of my mouth for a week. Big Mama continued looking up at Doug. I'm 90 years old, and I don't have a lot of time left on the earth. Please don't talk that way, Big Mama. A fact is a fact. Never be afraid to accept facts in life. This will help you live a little more worry-free and perhaps a little longer. Then she patted him on the leg, which offered a little reassurance. Doug smiled and responded, You've always talked to me straight, and I am thankful to you for this fact. One fact you must accept is that I am on my last leg. He dropped his head. A sad feeling overtook his body. Please don't talk that way. Now, Doug, you weren't raised to be a crybaby, so keep your chin up. If I died in a car wreck, then I would understand that you would feel sad. But I'm old and will die soon. That is the fact you must accept, and no one can change it. Not even the best doctors in the world can change this fact. Doug lifted his head and turned to look at his great-grandmother. Yes, I know this to be true, but I think I'm so sad because I will miss you. I will miss these talks we're having right now. You've always treated me good and told me like it is in life. I'm tired, Doug. My body is tired. The doctors have me on so many different pills, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel. It is very confusing to me. Still looking at his Big Mama, Doug showed little facial expression. I don't know what to say or do, but I'll do anything I can. I'm happy you made me this offer. Now go to the kitchen and get me a beer. Doug answered quickly in a sarcastic tone in his voice. Yeah, right, I'll be right back. Big Mama had a short fuse. Don't talk back to me, boy. What's your tone with me? I'm not dead yet. He relaxed his tone of voice as he responded to his Big Mama's demand. I realize that, but I don't wish to be the one to put the nails in your coffin. She acknowledged the change in his tone of voice. That's more like it. Until I'm gone, I am the boss of this family. Yes, Big Mama, I understand. She continued with her orders. Now go get me a beer. Doug shook his head in disgust. I'm afraid to do that. Besides, like you said, you're taking so many different pills, you might not be able to handle a beer. I rode a covered wagon halfway across this country when I was a kid. I've seen many come and many go, but today is not my time to go, so you go get me a beer. A little fear could be heard in Doug's voice. I'm afraid. If something were to happen to you, and if Papaw find out, I might not live through the day. Don't you worry about your Papaw. He's my son, and I can handle him. In an excited voice, Doug said, I can't believe I'm even considering doing this for you. That's a move in the right direction. Now move into the kitchen and get me a beer before you really upset me. If I do this for you, do you promise not to tell anyone? Doug questioned Big Mama. I will not let anyone harm you, I promise. He stood and paced around the living room. He walked over to the front door and looked out to see if anyone was coming home. He was not so much worried about his mamaw, but his Papaw would be a whole different story. Doug made another circle around the room. He stopped to look out the window again. On his next trip by the couch where Big Mama sat, she asked him a question. Are you a chicken shit? Doug knew his great-grandmother had a foul mouth. He remembered his visits to her home in Birmingham when she played poker, drank beer, and cussed like a sailor. No, I'm not, and you know it. I'll never back down in my life. Doug played into her request and headed toward the kitchen. Once in the kitchen, he looked out the back window. Papaw had an old shop out in the backyard where he liked to work on his old cars. He would fix them up and sell them from time to time. Doug wanted to make sure that he was not blindsided with his Papaw coming in the back door. He stood there and began daydreaming about not only what his Papaw might say, but what he might do to him. And then he was awakened from his daydream. Doug, what's taking so long? He did not answer. Again, he heard his Big Mama's voice. Doug, can you hear me? Where's my beer? I wish to have it today, please. Doug still not respond. He walked over to the refrigerator. Just as he opened it, he saw 4 bottles of beer. His Papaw was not a big drinker. He would only have one beer from time to time after work, so Doug knew that his grandfather would know if one of his beers was missing. He thought if he did this task for Big Mama, then there was no way it would go unnoticed. But he had committed. Chills ran up and down his spine as he envisioned Big Mama taking a drink of the cold beer and then falling over dead because it did not mix with the medicine the doctors were giving her. What would happen to him for doing this deed? But he was still committed. so he took a bottle of beer from the refrigerator and headed back toward the living room. As Doug entered the living room, he saw a smile come over Big Mama's face when she saw the bottle of cold beer. He handed it to her. "Thank you, but my teeth aren't as strong as they used to be, so you'll need to take the top off for me." Doug just looked at her small, frail body as she held that bottle of beer. Again, he saw the vision of her falling over dead after she took one sip. "Oh, I'm sorry." She handed him the bottle so he would open it. She said, "Nice try. Think of it this way. The sooner you open it, the sooner it'll be gone." For some strange reason, that made sense to Doug. So as requested, he opened the beer and handed it back to Big Mama. He just stood and stared as she took her first sip. "Man, is that good. It's been a while since I've had a nice cold beer." Smiling ear to ear, she said, "You've done right by me. I knew I could count on you. No one else would do this for me." Quickly, Doug asked, "What do you mean, no one else?" "Yes, I begged your two uncles, and they refused." This just kept getting worse in Doug's head. He could only see doom in his near future. "You need to drink that down, Big Mama, so I can get rid of the bottle." Then he turned and walked to the front door and kept a lookout for anyone who might be coming home. He looked out the window, then he looked back at Big Mama. She sat so happily holding her beer and sipping it slowly. A thrashing might be worth it. She was dying, she knew it, she accepted it, and no one could stop it. Doug remembered thinking that he hoped that when his time came, he would have this same strength as his Big Mama to accept death. For Doug, it seemed like hours before Big Mama finished the beer. Finally, he took the empty bottle from his great-grandmother and headed to the kitchen. He was relieved the ordeal was over. Then, just as Doug was about to bury the empty beer bottle deep in the trash can by the back door, his grandfather, Buddy, in full uniform, walked through the door. Buddy worked for the sheriff's department. He was a fair man, but in his starched fleece uniform, complete with his badge and a very noticeable large-caliber pistol, he was very intimidating. Buddy spoke first. "Have you been stealing my beer?" "No, sir." "Then you'll not mind explaining the empty beer bottle in your hand." As Doug continued the motion of placing the beer bottle in the trash can, Buddy took the bottle and placed it on the kitchen table. "Doug, I'm waiting for your answer," he said as he sat down in his chair at the head of the table and motioned with his head for Doug to take a seat. Doug sat down, but still did not answer his grandfather. His grandfather spoke again, and this time he spoke even firmer. "I'll ask again, and only once. Tell me about this bottle." Doug complied. "I didn't drink it, I promise." "Then someone did, that's for sure." Doug knew the truth would come out sooner or later, so he saw no point in beating around the bush. "I gave it to Big Mama." Standing, Buddy looked down at Doug. "You wait here." Then he went into the living room to check on his mother. A few minutes later, Buddy returned to the kitchen and sat back down. "You know you could have killed your great-grandmother?" "I'm sorry. She's taken so many different pills that the doctors have given her, and no one knows what the alcohol could do in her system." "She begged me, Papa," Doug said. "She tricked me. I'm not sure how, but I fought it all the way." Buddy stood again. "You wait here and think about what you've done. You think about what could have happened. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." A lot flashed through Doug's mind, the vision of what might have gone wrong with the beer and the medication mixing in Big Mama's system. He also got chills when he thought about what his grandfather might do to him. Perhaps 15 minutes passed before his grandfather returned. He had changed into his civilian clothes. He walked over to the refrigerator and took out a beer before returning to his seat at the head of the table. Once he was seated, he opened his beer and took a sip from the chilled bottle. "I'm very disappointed in you. You're smarter than this, or at least I thought so." Doug replied, "I'm very sorry." "As well as you should be. Where's your grandmother?" "She wasn't here when I got home," Doug told his grandfather. "I'll deal with her later. I left instructions for my mother never to be left alone." Doug said in silence. He knew this was not over. "There'll have to be some punishment for this. Do you realize that?" "Yes, sir. I'll have to think about it, but it will happen." Doug looked his grandfather in the eyes. "I understand. I like the fact that you're not afraid to look me in the eyes. This shows me a sign that you're becoming a man and that you're not afraid to accept your punishment. But this is not over. Your punishment will come in due time." "I understand, Papa. What I did was wrong. I could have shortened Big Mama's life. But the way she said it to me made sense. She told me no amount of medicine could stop what was coming her way." Buddy paused and took a sip of his beer. "She talked to you about death?" "Yes, sir." "How does she feel about it?" Doug sat back and relaxed a little in his chair. He felt for the moment he was safe. I think she has accepted the fact that her time with us is coming to a close. I think she's made peace with it. A lighter look came across his grandfather's face. That took a lot from a young man to have that conversation. No one has gotten her to open up about dying, not me, the doctors, or even the preacher. She just started talking to me. I asked nothing. What I'm saying is this is a good thing, which has just happened. Perhaps I should have given her a beer when she asked. Her time is short, maybe 2 weeks on the outside. Doug fought back the tears in his eyes. I'm very sorry for what I have done. What you did today was very wrong. But perhaps there is a bright side to this incident, Buddy said as he looked over at Doug with just a slight smile showing on his face. What is that, Papaw? At least now we know that you will go in peace. Now you go play, and we'll talk about this again soon. Doug was awakened from his reflection of the past by Ruth. I just love that story. It shows how strong Big Mama was at the time of her death. How long did she live after you gave her the beer? Doug looked away from the ocean to find Ruth's eyes. About 2 weeks. Mama was there with her. She told us that Big Mama was getting up from the couch and just fell across the coffee table dead. So the beer did not kill her? Doug smiled and looked back at the ocean. No, and lucky for me. I'm going to be strong like your great-grandmother. Now go get me a glass of wine. Make sure and open a fresh bottle. Doug turned to look back over at Ruth. You've always been smarter than I've been. I'm really going to miss you. Then he stood and headed to the kitchen. A few minutes later, he returned with a glass of wine and set it down next to her. Lean down here, she told Doug. And she gave him a kiss on the cheek. I love you.